It's football and other F words, and you may be wondering, Zach, why are you wearing a blindfold? Well, I just wanted to know what it felt like to all the people out there who still have their blinders on regarding the quarterback situation of the Tennessee Titans, and not recognizing that some of it may be actually Will Levis's fault, because it seems like we're just going back in time, like I said last week, to 2018 and 2019. And I just wanted to know what it felt like to be blind. And it's really dark and lonely, and I understand why you guys are just so pitiful when you cannot be adults and objectively talk about this team. But don't worry, that's why we are here. Mike, Stoney, and myself, football and other F words on 1045 The Zone. Essentially, this team is in dire straits, and this team can pull itself out. I do not think that it is the worst team. Like, let me rephrase. It's the worst team currently, but I don't think it will be the worst team by the end of the NFL season. I do think that may belong to two other teams in the AFC South, the Colts and the Jaguars, who are in really pitiful moments. And at least this team has players that are proven commodities, and I will have to say that. But NPF is a bust. Will Levis is a bust. Pretty much the problems the problems that we saw with the right tackle position just ended up being the problems that we thought they would be. And then over there at the quarterback situation, anybody that was hashtag never Levis, looking pretty good right now for that movement. Despite hope that Will Levis may turn into something, the more you watch, the more you see, the more you hear him talk, the more you hear the coaches talk, the more you hear everybody else talk. He's got a long road ahead to win back a lot of people, and it's not going to. It should take more than one game, and if it's going to take you just one game to get back in on the Will Levis train, you've learned nothing from Marcus Mariota, and you deserve all the pain and heartbreak that is coming to you. I'm joined by Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL, Stoney Keeley at Stoney Keeley. Guys, let's just get down to brass tacks. Mike, you were kind of the first 2 weeks like, oh, there's a lot of good from Will Levis and blah, blah, blah. Where's your temperature now on Will Levis?
It's the same. There's still a lot of good in there.
There
was some bad too.
A lot of good?
There's some good stuff in there too. I think
we're already got down from a lot to some. Can I get you down to maybe like one or two things of good?
It's fine. Like there's good parts, right? Like the first drive of the game, I thought he was very good. I think his accuracy has consistently been very good this season. The decision making is still the problem. Like, and we knew that was the problem. That's still the stumbling block. That's still the big concern long term. And I don't know if he's going to get over it or not. I mean, he didn't do anything like mega dumb in this game, but there was issues, right? And I put that play on Twitter that then brought me right back into like the Mariota Twilight Zone of 2019 when, you post a play where it's clearly the quarterback's fault. And everyone rushes in to defend the guy and blame it on the wide receiver, blame it on the coach, blame it on the offensive line, blame it on his shoes not fitting right. Yeah, I don't know. Like there's a million excuse makers running out to white knight for Will Levis when you put up one play that is clearly a poor play by the quarterback. But look, there's like, it's just a totally mixed bag. There's no consistency play to play. His technique is all over the place. His decision making is all over the place. It's rough. So will it get better? I don't know. Do I want him bench for Mason Rudolph? Hell no. This season is over, guys. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not going to be the second team of all time to come back from 0-3 and make the playoffs. This season is over.
Well, the second team since
next 14 games
2018, I
practice.
guess.
What?
I mean, there's been 6 of them that made it to the playoffs.
Well, the one in the last like 2 decades. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
listen,
not
we
going
gotta
to be
be right.
second.
If we're gonna bash a guy and bash a team, let's at least bash him with correct information.
Well, whatever. The season is over. Let's declare. I'm willing to declare that. I will timestamp it on September 25th, 2024 at 8:43 p.m. Dead on arrival. Titans 2024 season. We don't need to worry about the playoffs. We don't need to get out any playoff simulation machines this season. We can close all those bookmarks for November and December, and just pull up some draft stuff, baby, because that's what we're trending towards. And it's just going to be watching Will Levis and trying to see if he can figure shit out for the next 3 months. So strap in.
I mean, Stoney, at some point, we have to realize that the decision making is just in his DNA. And, I joked about him kind of like Jake Locker, and I've called him Zach Wilson, called him Jay Cutler, all with the preface of bluegrass, one of those players. And the problem is that that's kind of what he is. And, if you're sitting there making fun of the Jacksonville Jaguars paying for Trevor Lawrence, who's been a mediocre quarterback his entire NFL career as a whole on every season, then there's no way that as a fan base you can look at Will Levis and say, that's a $60 million quarterback. Because guess what? The NFL, let's just stop paying mediocre quarterbacks. Let's pay good ones. Because you know what you could do with that money? Build a team around a mediocre quarterback and do what Minnesota's doing with Sam Darnold.
Sure.
Like, that is the way to build a team until you find your quarterback. And just keep drafting quarterbacks and then sit a quarterback and do all that kind of stuff. I digress. Stoney, is there any hope in your mind? Like, let's be realistic. Put a percentage on it, okay? Because I understand, like, I have 10%, 20% hope that maybe Will Levis overcomes all of his deficiencies that we have seen over the last now 3.5 years, including college, and will suddenly turn into something. It's possible. Improbable, but possible. What is your hope level for Will Levis?
It's pretty low at this point, and the reason for that is because we're seeing mistakes that we saw him make that were criticisms of his tape at Kentucky. So this is something going back to his college evaluation when we talk about sensing pressure in the pocket, drifting around a little bit, the inconsistent ball placement. I think he's been a lot better about it from the first week when it felt like every other throw he had was either way out in front of the guy or behind the guy. He's gotten better at it, but it's still there. And then the decision-making when things aren't going perfectly as they're schemed up, he kind of defaults to factory settings. And those factory settings were mistake-prone football at Kentucky, where some of those issues showed up on his tape, and they were the reasons that guys like you and me, Zach, were #NeverLevis. And from the smoke we heard at the Senior Bowl, there was stuff that he wasn't going to go in the first round, that a lot of teams weren't really that high on him. And I think if you connect those dots and you remind yourself of that at the time, it presents a little bit more clarity to the situation that the Titans are in now. In between those two times, the draft and where we are now, there was a 2023 season during which Levis showed some pretty good flashes. The Atlanta game was awesome. The Dolphins comeback win was awesome, but we saw Levis hit some of those deep shots off of play action. It's not the same offense. Tim Kelly to Brian Callahan, it's two different concepts. And with Brian Callahan, a lot of this slow developing, longer top-down read route concepts are a little more difficult to process in real time. You have to go through the progressions quickly. The ball has to come out quickly. You have to make decisions quickly. And when pass protection's not holding up and maybe, you're getting a little hesitant to begin with, it's really easy to revert back to the things that we've seen from him for quite some time now. To your point, the Seattle Seahawks, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a combined 8-1 at this point, with Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Baker Mayfield at quarterback. So there is a path to not paying your Trevor Lawrences of the world and being patient with some of the guys that have been drafted before. And I would highlight Jordan Love in this conversation as well for the Green Bay Packers, a late bloomer that they were really patient with, and now it's paying dividends. It kind of just makes me wonder if there is something to be said about taking some of these safer prospects and just letting them grow and develop instead of constantly shooting for that home run and overpaying guys that you think remotely could be in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. So to sum it all up, Zach, to answer your question in a word or two, I don't have a lot of hope that Will Levis is going to get to that point. Maybe he gets a little bit better, but it's discouraging to me to see that he's still doing the same things that have been issues for him for 2 years now.
I guess.
Yeah, I think well, just real quick, I think that there is going to be a shift in how teams handle rookie quarterbacks, unless teams are really, really desperate. But I think you're going to start seeing a shift where teams maybe signed a vet for like 10 to 15 mil, maybe 20 mil or whatever. That part of the market's going to have to get shaken out here soon, but where they're going to do that, and then they're going to have a guy sit on the bench until, the year 2, or they sit down and someone gets injured, because that's really what needs to be. And for all the people who want to say, well, if you let him go, he's going to turn into something somewhere else, like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, or Geno Smith. Well, 2 of those guys were better prospects coming out of college in first and third overall picks. Entirely different situations. And Geno Smith took 9 fucking years. Do you want to wait 9 years for Will Levis to be something if you're a Tennessee Titans fan? Like, let's get a grip on using these very rare outliers as reason to cling and hold on to Will Levis if he does not turn it around. I just want to say that it's silly to use those as examples to be as fear-mongering, propaganda to try to get people like the what ifs. Like, let's be honest here. Go ahead, Mike. What were you going to say?
But I do think that there's something to the fact that it does take some guys a little bit longer to develop. And I'm not saying Levis is one of those guys. I'm not saying he's going to get there. But there are some guys that, I mean, look, Cleveland would be in a way better place if they had held on to Baker than what they did at the quarterback position right now. Now, should they have paid Baker Mayfield $50 million a year or anything like? No, like, of course not. And the fact of the matter is that part of the reason Tampa is in a good situation with Baker right now is because they're not paying him a ton of money. But I do think you don't pull the rug out from Levis right now, obviously. I mean, he's going to get the rest of the season. We've said that consistently. There's no point in putting Mason Rudolph in to try to win 7 games and take your draft pick, right? Without any upside. And no, Mason Rudolph is not, Ryan Tannehill 2.0 and going to lead this team to an improbable AFC championship run. I just don't believe that to be the case whatsoever. But I do think you give him the rest of the season. And then if you're not totally enamored with this quarterback draft class, which I don't know that I am right now, I think maybe you give him another year. I don't know that you're going to have a better option in free agency. Maybe you go get him some real competition if there's a Baker-esque free agent.
Just re-up Mason Rudolph at this point.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe it is, but I think he might get this year and next year. I mean that'll be very discouraging for some fans here right now, and maybe even more so if the season does not get better. But you don't want to force, just because you're frustrated with Levis, you force a bad draft pick on another quarterback and restart that cycle and go through another 2 or 3 years of banging your head against the wall while you miss out on draft classes that might include guys like Arch Manning and Nico Iamaleava, or Iamaleava. I'm still working on it.
You're not impressing anybody by getting that last name.
I'll get it. I'll get it one day. And there's other guys too beyond those 2, but those are kind of the gems right now. But Raiola, the other one, I was trying to think of, but you don't force the pick. I think we might be in for two seasons of Levis here.
Well, if that is the case, then you might as well just be also, while you're scouting quarterbacks in 2026, scout head coaches and GMs, because he'll get them all fired. And I mean, that's just the way it's going to be probably, unless they bring in someone that beats them out, right? I mean, like, that's the best case scenario for them to keep their job. Matthew Maddox says, and Callahan is not a quarterback whisperer like they say. Nobody, if anybody called him a quarterback whisperer, they were being very, very, I guess I would say, over exaggerating
Generous.
what he is, because he's not. Nobody has ever labeled him in national media a quarterback whisperer, to my knowledge, and all the research I've done. He's been a guy that's worked with a lot of great quarterbacks and has learned how to talk and teach many different kinds of quarterbacks, but he's never been a guy that is like suddenly turned a quarterback into anything, because I don't even know how much credit he gets for Jake Browning. But I think the issue is kind of like what you're seeing with Bill Callahan and NPF. A coach can only do so much if a player's not willing to execute. And I mean, like, there is I think Justin Graver on Titans Film Room shared a photo. I guess it was probably after the what the fuck are you doing play call, I guess. But like, he's pointing and yelling at Will Levis. Like, this is a Will Levis issue. This is not a coaching issue. I just want everybody to kind of realize that. I don't think it's a coaching issue. Now, you can say that maybe Will Levis is not the scheme fit for this particular scheme or whatever. I mean, this is a Bengal scheme that came from the Ram scheme, which is, guess what? What Will Levis kind of ran when he was in Kentucky, that everybody kind of like was freaking out. Oh, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. And then Rich Scangarello, who's a member of the San Francisco tree, came in. And then everybody's like, oh, it's the Scangarello tree or whatever. You know, it's Scangarello's fault. No, it's probably just Will Levis's fault. Can we all just agree that it's probably Will Levis's fault?
I mean, we'll see.
I mean, Mike, you want to push back that it's a coaching thing. Like, why are you pushing back on that?
Well, because we're 3 games in. I mean, to throw out
and he's making mistakes.
He's making mistakes. I don't think the coaching has been perfect either. I think you can see some clunky stuff. I think there's a reason that they tend to start hot in the first half and then they taper off as the game moves along. I don't think it's like that they're fatigued. I think Brian Callahan's struggling with making in-game adjustments and handling head coaching duties and being the play.
But that doesn't really have anything to do with the mistakes we're seeing from Will Levis, does it? I mean, that's a totally different situation.
Not the big bonehead stuff, but the offense just
the misreads
getting clunky
and
in the second half.
Being inaccurate. That's not
I don't think
really
he has been inaccurate. I don't think he has been inaccurate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's just, overthrew Tyler Boyd way behind him with the ball.
He missed a couple throws in a game. Show me one quarterback who missed 0 throws, who had 0 inaccurate passes.
The scheme has actually made it to where he actually is able to hit easy throws, even if his timing's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, he's CPOE. Every metric you look at for accuracy has been positive. I think the tape has shown he's been mostly positive accuracy-wise. I don't think he's struggling from an accuracy standpoint. I do think that the play calling gets a little bit clunky and he gets into lulls, and part of it he's trying to protect against a terrible tackle situation again, and this is the same reason why I was not on the bash Todd Downing train as early as everyone else, because I felt for the guy in the fact that having a nightmare situation at tackle handcuffs you so bad as a play caller, because you can't call anything. Like, do you bring it? Do you have, the fact that every time you're like, all right, well, I got to drop back to pass, and unless I'm keeping 7 guys in to protect, I'm going to get instant pressure, right? Like, that is such a terrible situation to be in as a play caller. If you're trying to do anything besides run the ball a couple times and try to get it into 3rd and 3, which is what these coaches keep trying to do because they're covering for terrible tackle play. But anyways, I just think we're 3 games into the Callahan thing. He's still learning. I wrote at length about people were so mad at Matt LaFleur here in 2018. It was his first time calling plays besides Ashland College, like 10 years previous. He was not that good that year. Right? The offense was clunky, and people will blame it on Mariota now, but the offense was not great. Now he's getting Malik Willis, who, regardless of what you want to say about Mariota, I think Mariota is clearly a better quarterback than Malik Willis was. And he's getting that out of Malik Willis after being with him for 4 weeks.
Callahan did a lot of that work, too.
And he's 7 years.
They should have kept him.
Now. It's the difference between him being very first time doing it and 7 years in, knows what he's doing, knows what he wants, has the guys that he wants to execute what he wants to do. I think we've got to be patient with Callahan. And I think we got to be patient with Levis too, just because we're dealing with so much newness on both sides of the ball. And I think that's rearing its ugly head. I mean, all these new starters, all these new coaches, nobody's got experience doing any of this stuff. It's not surprising that they're struggling early. I'm a little surprised that it's quite as bad as what it has been, but I'm not surprised that they're struggling overall.
I just think that there's a lot of bad decisions that he makes, and that's kind of where I'm at on Will Levis. I mean, you even talk about trying to jump for the first down from the 2 yards out. This dude doesn't know where the first down marker is now on 2 first down runs we've noticed. It's like he's like, "Oh, I had to get the first down, and I knew I had to like plow through. I couldn't slide." Yeah, you got it by 5 yards, dude. Do you not know when? And then this one, he tried to jump for it 2 yards out. Like this guy.
I think his feel for the game is a real concern. And that's
Yes.
my thing is like, I don't know if you can develop that or coach that, or if that'll get better over time, or if that's a reps thing. That's the big question to me. Like,
We're
it's just
having
a
Brian
feel for
Billick on the
game.
show on Friday, and I'm hoping to get an answer because I've asked multiple like players at the radio station. I've asked Blaine, I've asked Chris Sanders or Kevin Dyson. I've asked these people, and I'm like, what do you, and I've asked Coach Mack, like, how do you coach this? And it's a Will Levis thing, and that's I mean, that's going to be an issue if that is truly from 2 players and a coach. And we'll talk to Brian Billick, who had like Kyle Bowler and all these other terrible quarterbacks, but found some success, obviously with Trent Dilfer. But like, can you teach pocket awareness? What can you do about decision making? What can you do about game feel and all this kind of stuff? Like, it can't just be reps. Because if all the reps are bad, when are you? And he's not showing any sign of like learning because he's still drifting into sacks, like instead of and all this kind of stuff. Like I just, I understand the newness reason. I understand that like, oh, he's only played like 12 games, blah blah blah. At some point, a spade is a spade, and I'm just like I'm trying to brace everybody that we talked about it ad nauseum. There's all kinds of data to suggest that this just ain't going to work out here with Will Levis. And to me, I don't know if it's ever going to really work out with Will Levis anywhere. I think he may just be a backup, and that's fine. It's fine to be a backup. You can ask Dan Orlovsky and Case Keenum, who have turned it into commercials careers, Chase McDaniel. I mean, all these guys have made a lot of money and everything. But what you see on the tape, what you see in data, is not encouraging, and it's been that way for 3.5 years. I mean, I think we got so excited and so thirsty as a fan base, Tony. I want to get your opinion on this. We've been so excited and thirsty for a quarterback that I kind of think that we let the Falcons game and the Miami game really overshadow the rest of the games last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Zach. And I think you also look at some of the press conferences where some of the coaches are talking about Will Levis. And I think you hear people say, oh, he's built like Josh Allen. Like this is Matthew Stafford ceiling. Like these are good quarterbacks that people start kind of buying into this hype over. And it's easy to look at the physical traits and get excited. It's easy watch the bombs throwing against the Atlanta Falcons and get kind of caught up in that. I think there probably is something to your point, Zach, that this fan base has been so hungry for a quarterback like that for so long that you see those flashes and you really latch on to him. You really hold on to him. And maybe it kind of blinds you to some of the issues that he's having. I think, we can still get to a good spot with Will Levis because of the traits, because of the physical capabilities. What we always hear about him is that he is a super smart guy. He's a super competitive guy. And everybody uses this as evidence to suggest, well, he can get in the classroom. He can get in the film room. He's putting in the work. And you think eventually, like at one point, it's going to click. At least that's the hope. I think where this conversation changes is on the coaching staff. If Nick Holtz and Bo Hardigree and Brian Callahan are all sitting together and they've concluded, okay, this just is what he is, does the conversation change to how do we coach around that? And that's where I think it's a disadvantageous position to be in too, because this is still a rookie head coach that's just trying to get his feet beneath him as a play caller in general. And now things aren't working, and you've got to kind of adjust and adapt to it. I don't know. I think it feels like a thin ice situation for me, where this thing could kind of turn sideways by midseason.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like to me. I mean, Mike, what's your faith in? Because I asked Stoney earlier, and what'd you say? 25%, Stoney?
You know what? Yeah, 25%. That sounds about right.
What was yours, Mike?
I don't know. Hard to put a figure on it. Maybe I'll say 28.7%.
There we go.
I like it. 28.7%. So we're all pretty much under 30%, which is not a good sign that we all kind of agree on that.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, we haven't seen it yet for long enough, right? Like, you mentioned the 2 games where he really flashed, and he's flashed in other games, like some really impressive. Like, I thought there were some throws in there against the Jets that were really good stuff. That is really impressive, but it's just it's too inconsistent right now, and to really, like, for me to buy in any further than that at this point. The tools are there. I mean, the tools are still why I was excited to see him this year. I was hoping we'd see less of the dumb stuff, but we'll see. It's a long season. We're going to get a lot of this to evaluate.
And it also just like creeps in the back. And listen, the NFL doesn't have a 100% hit rate on quarterbacks whatsoever being drafted in the right round, but just something about being in the second round just is like, man, that just sticks in the back of your head. And there were rumors that teams wanted to trade up and get him, and teams wouldn't trade back, and all that kind of stuff. But just something about that following that second round just doesn't sit. And the fact that the Tennessee Titans valued a guard over Will Levis as well. So they were one of the teams that passed over Will Levis initially. So it's a tough pill to swallow right now when you look at just big picture overall, the mistakes, the pocket awareness, the and I'm not even including the pick 6 in any of this, and really not any of the fumbles. It's just that there are other mistakes. When I say mistakes, there are other mistakes where, going for Traylon Burks and deep when you could have gone somewhere else, but you held on to that read too long. That's stuff that just shows up on tape ever since college. And if it was different mistakes than what you saw in college, than what you have seen even sometimes last year. And again, I'm not just referring to the fumble pick, the fumble flick, the flick 6 and all that. I'd probably be feeling a little bit different about hope. I am with you, Mike, where the newness of it all is kind of like that's where my hope clings to, not necessarily Will Levis, but that everybody else around Will Levis starts to click. And that's where we need to get into the offensive line. Because, I mean, we've all bashed NPF at one time or another, but we all thought that maybe if anybody can get anything out of him is Bill Callahan. And I don't know what's being said in the meeting rooms or these free agent meetings or these draft meetings, because we even joked, and I think we all kind of were like, I think we all walked away in our mock drafts for the Tennessee Titans like, take 2 tackles. Take 2 tackles. And they didn't. They didn't sign a tackle or anything. So, like, we knew NPF could be an issue more often than not. And they chose to just ride with John Ojukwu and Jalen Duncan. And Stoney, I'll start with you. What did you see from NPF besides some fantastic twerking skills?
Man, it's a lot of problems. A lot of problems with oversetting, giving up the inside lane, undersetting, giving up outside. There were cases when he didn't get his feet beneath him and the edge rusher just kind of got into his chest. He wasn't matching the pad level, so the rusher got low, hands up, and kind of just pushed him back like a blocking sled. There were times when he got to the second level, and I've spoken about this before, but the complexities of the run game, the new scheme that we're seeing from Bill Callahan as run game coordinator, it requires a lot of moving parts. And for it to be, reach its full potential, reach the full vision, it has to be executed perfectly. So if one block isn't hit, it has the potential to like blow the whole thing up. And there was a play in Sunday's game when NPF got up to the second level and he just stopped and hesitated. And instead of initiating the block and getting into Quay Walker, he just kind of stood there looking around, and Quay Walker just runs by him through a gap, gets into the backfield, and brings Tyjae Spears down from behind. So there's like a sense of hesitancy in him. And I know there's been a point of criticism in the last couple of weeks about him not having dog in him. I think it could be fair. I mean, I hate to question that because I'm not in the locker room with these guys. I'm not at the press conference talking to them. I don't have as good of a sense as some other people do. But when you watch the tape, I'll frame it like this: at the very least, from watching the tape and seeing how he gets to certain spots and freezes, it makes me think, okay, that would work. That would make sense as an explanation for what's happening here, is that he just doesn't have the instincts. He doesn't have the dog to execute this system. He's a really good athlete. He's a smooth mover. When they run zone plays and plays that rely on you getting out in space, he can move, he can get there. But it just kind of seems like there's something going on. I don't know if it's a mental block or what, but he's just, man, he's really rough in a lot of the techniques, and he just kind of looks out of his depths at times too.
Mike, feel free to call him timid, meek, whatever word you want to use, but there is no dog. I will go on record. Okay. There's no dog, and you can't find a dog if you don't have a dog, and that's just kind of where I'm at. I think he thinks he can go to and adopt one. Maybe he can, find one out in the wild. But this man doesn't have it in him at all. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's baffling.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, he doesn't have it. He's not good. He's not getting better. And for him, I mean, we talked about Levis and everything, but for him, he's in year 3 now. And I get, same thing, new coach, but this coach that he's working under, it's not his first time doing it. He's been doing it for a long time and is one of the best in the business. And there's too many just horrific reps in there. And it's kind of like that. It's the same stuff from the rookie year where he's just not able to react when something doesn't go as he expects it to. It's like he's guessing or trying to play the play in his mind ahead of when it's actually happening. And then he can't react when it doesn't go the way that he has it mapped out in his mind. He does not have any instinct or just, reaction ability in either the run game or the pass game. It's really bad. And only Jalen Duncan is worse. So I don't know what you do. Honest to God, I just don't.
Listen, I don't know how many people are available in free agency. I don't know how, all the ins and outs of practice squads or anything, but there's no way that they could sit there and tell me that the NPF, who's probably the 64th best right tackle in the league right now, you can't find 63rd. Like, you can't find 62nd.
64th is generous. To be honest.
I mean, give me a break. Get this guy off the field. If maybe their goal is to just get Will Levis injured so they can not play him, and that's their. I don't know, but there's no reason to play NPF at this point, and especially when there's Chris Hubbard sitting there on the San Francisco practice squad, and from what I know, they've made no effort to try to get Chris Hubbard. I mean, they brought in 4 freaking running backs the other day for workouts. You couldn't just at least slip in 1 tackle just to make us happy? Like, I mean. We have slammed Mike Vrabel and John Robinson for the last 2 years for doing the same thing. And I'm going to slam Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan for doing the same thing. Fix this issue. I'm not asking for a 2025 and beyond long-term fix to be found in 2024. Because I don't want you to trade for a pick to go get a right tackle. You need that draft capital because this is a lost season. But go find a Band-Aid in 2024. It's utterly ridiculous and irresponsible of both the head coach, the general manager, and Bill Callahan if he's not flexing his nuts to try to get something done as well. Because he's got the tenure, he's got the voice. maybe it's an ego thing, and he's like, well, I'm Bill Callahan, and I can get NPF. I'm sorry, you just can't. Like, NPF is unsalvageable at this point for this franchise, and maybe he needs to get a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe he just needs to go play fantasy football. He should retire, do the Titans a favor, and just retire right now. That would be so helpful in my mind. Just don't give them the option to play you any longer. Take your millions of dollars that you already been paid or been owed. Go talk about fantasy sports. Because I don't want to see the ball snap and 2 seconds later you finally decide to move. There are times where he's just still in his stance, and everybody else and everything around him, the play is happening on against the Packers.
Did you guys see the play where he tripped over the Packers defensive lineman was rushing away from him, going in on Radens, and he's trying to get to the second level, and he trips over the Packers foot as the guy's pulling away from him. Like, and he's trying to get to a cutoff block to hit the linebacker. Everything else on the play is blocked up perfectly. Just there's this, you can see it on the tape from the end zone angle. There's just a hole a mile wide on the left side of the offensive line. But because Nicholas Petit-Frere is tripping over Packers who aren't even engaging with him, he's tripping over him. He's on the ground. There's nobody there to block this linebacker, and it's just a free lane at the running back, and it blows the play up. I mean,
what's that film room like, you think? Like, when NPF is watching this, do you think he even understands what he's watching? Do you think that he knows that's him?
I don't know.
I'm not sure that he knows if he's watching film. Oh, is that me? Is that my number? I'm not even, I wouldn't be surprised.
You would think that they would want to get a better quality right tackle in the game just to help with the Will Levis evaluation.
To help with the play calling, right? Because they want to run certain plays where an NFL professional offensive lineman should be able to hold his one-on-one block for longer than what an NPF has, because they need to have other options for their quarterback to go with the ball. That's how they want to run the offense. And having NPF not be able to hold a block long enough is what is really kind of hurting this offense.
Yeah.
But, like, Mike, anybody, I mean, just tape NPF and Jalen Duncan together at this point and just let them be one. Siamese twin surgery, calling it right now.
You wouldn't have any dogs between the two of them still, though. Because if NPF doesn't have any dog in him, then I damn sure know that Jalen Duncan doesn't. That boy, it's so bad. He looks so good when he moves around out there, and he just looks physically like a tackle should look. But then you watch him play, and it's like, oh God, it's a mess.
It's funny with him because I see like the progress from year 1 to year 2, but it's like he's running drills in game action, if that makes sense. Like, you can see the coaching points, right? Like, get back, get deep in your set, stay parallel to the line of scrimmage, get your hands up. And he's running these drills to perfection, but then not accounting for the fact that there's somebody rushing the trying to get to the quarterback that you have to engage with, and there needs to be a move and a counter move. So it's like, yeah, your drill looks perfect, buddy, but we're not taking into account the fact that you're playing against someone that's trying to get by you. There were so many plays on Sunday where he gets back and he gets his hands in position, and then you notice like he's following the rusher with his head and just like watching instead of rotating and getting into the block, driving the guy away, getting into his chest. It just looks like there's not a lot of natural feel for the position, and it looks like a guy that is just thinking way too much out there.
Mike, at this point, wouldn't you just rather have someone that's fat that can at least react quick? Like, maybe not good, but at least I can get in front of someone. You know, I think that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm at the point now where I think I would probably try to kick out Radens and try him there, because you just can't survive with this kind of tackle play. I mean, I'd love Chris Hubbard. He's definitely a Band-Aid, but at least he gives you a chance to evaluate Levis credibly. And I do think he was maybe a little overrated in how he played here last year early in the season, just because they were helping him a whole bunch early on. But I would rather do that. I would rather try Radens at right tackle than to continue to try this NPF Jalen Duncan poo-poo platter rotation that they're going with here. Yeah, I'd move Radens out and try Brunskill at right guard, because we know Brunskill can at least, he might suck for this run scheme as far as he's not going to be able to do certain things for you the way that Radens can on the inside, but he at least can pass protect a little bit, and I'll sacrifice a few run menu options coming off the board for a few pass menu options that can go back on, because you can actually pass block for more than a second and a half. So they've got to do something. It's an untenable situation at right tackle. It's crippling the offense again. And the worst thing is, and this is what's frustrating to me, and I get it. It's limited resources, limited draft picks, all that. But everyone knew this was going to be a problem on the right side of the offensive line all off season. Everyone was like, why don't they go get Dalton Reisner? Why don't they go, why don't you go get, whoever else, Connor Williams, somebody to stick over there at like right guard. Why don't you go get, Cam Fleming was the guy that I've wanted, like all off season. Cheap, veteran, can do it, doesn't suck. He's not great. He's not a solution long term, but he is not going to suck. Raise your floor. And they didn't do anything. They threw Sadiq Charles and Dylan Radens into a competition. They threw Nicholas Petitfer and John Ajukwu and Jalen Dunk into a competition. And guess what? All the guys that sucked still suck. And it's just so frustrating to watch that. And on the opposite side of the ball, same deal with the edge rushers. We knew it was going to suck. And it does suck, and it's hurting the team, and it's frustrating that they didn't do anything, because I'm not saying they got to go spend $12 million or $20 million on the best guy out there. I'm just saying you do something, get a higher floor than what you got, because your floor is
Fleming
way
signed
too
a
far.
contract last year with the Denver Broncos for $2.35 million.
Right.
Sign him for $3 million. Let's solve this thing. Like, at least provide you a couple weeks relief, right? If he gets injured again, he gets injured again. Like, what is the harm?
The way I'm framing this right tackle situation for Titans fans out there that might be watching, if you think of the Titans offense as a pirate ship, NPF is the cannonball through the side of it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's enough to sink the whole thing.
Yeah, I do firmly believe in the offensive line weak link theory, that basically your offensive line is no stronger than your weakest part of it. And right now the Titans have a lot of, questionable links, but there is one truly horrific link, and that's the right tackle, and it's not a secret. Everybody knows it. You're going to get your best pass rusher lined up against whoever's at right tackle for the Titans on every critical down, and that is going to be a world of hurt for them all year long until they try
what
something
sucks
else.
is that J.C. Latham is improving every week right before our eyes. He's looking
Much
like
better.
one of the best rookies in the rookie class. Every week he's improving. The problem is that everyone else cannot be consistent. And when he can't carry the burden of 4 other players. And Will Levis has to recognize to get the ball out, but also Brian Callahan has to make sure his primary reads are not going top down. They need to be really quick, because you have to get rid of the ball. That is the point. But that also brings me to, Mike, you touched on it earlier, and something that, reminds me of 2018, 2019 in this kind of situation is that everybody wanted to blame Matt LaFleur. Everybody wanted to blame Art Smith. And then they made the quarterback switch, and Art Smith for a year and a half was balls out awesome. And it wasn't just because he called a whole new playbook and designed a whole new playbook for Ryan Tannehill that Marcus didn't have access to.
He ran all the good plays for Tannehill.
Yeah. It's because a lot of things happened after that, Mark. The offensive line got better. The quarterback position got better. But Art Smith himself got a better feel for the game. And what we're seeing through these first 3 weeks is the growing pains of a rookie offensive play caller, but also the rookie defensive play caller who was in way over his head. And I guess I don't know if Denard Smith watched any of the Colts versus Green Bay film to prepare for Malik Willis, because I don't know what the hell that defensive game plan was. But that is the growing pains, and people already want these people to be fired, which to me is just insane. You can't. And listen, I'm one of the people that has bashed Amy Adams Strunk for her bad processes. Sometimes they turn into good results, but she sometimes shoots from the hip. I was really expecting some big change after this Malik Willis game. So there's a sign, fingers crossed, knock on wood, sign of growth from the owner to not make a rash decision. And that is the right move, because I see shades and hear from Brian Callahan and see him coaching, see him on the sidelines. I see shades of a really good head coach. Do I think that he's going to be Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur good? I don't know. But I do think that there are shades of a really good head coach. But he is definitely going through some play calling growing pains like most people do in their first year calling plays. Denard Wilson, same thing. And look, I personally wanted Malik Willis to stay, but there is something to be said that part of Malik Willis's growth was learning this offense and being able to show in preseason his growth under this regime and this coaching staff and pull up some plays. And that's why they traded for him, because they said, oh, well, he's running Brian Callahan's system pretty well. We could bring him over here and get something out of him and all that jazz. And to be honest, I wish they would have kept him. I mean, they definitely, not even the loss, but if you're just not going to play the other two tight ends and never make them active, you might as well just have kept Malik Willis and let him be your emergency quarterback. Like, it was just a no-brainer to me. But at the end of the day, the people that want all these people fired are being just utterly ridiculous at this point. I understand it's 0-3, and you're granted some ridiculous takes and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you don't want any of these guys fired, because you just keep creating this weird whirlwind purgatory of never being good and always pulling nobody's going to want to come work for a franchise, or they're going to be very reluctant to work for a franchise that pulls the alarm every week. And this is, at this point, I agree with you, Mike, and your piece over at PK.com is just be patient.
Yeah, which is not, it's antithetical to this fan base and really football fans as a whole. I mean, everybody wants microwave results. And sometimes it takes some time. I mean, you look around other rebuilds, in recent years that have been successful, and it generally takes, 2-3 years. I mean, you look at when Nick Caserio got to Houston, as in, I think 2021, he got there. They were terrible his first year. They were terrible his second year. And then they got the quarterback. They got some pieces that clicked together, and then they broke out last year. And, they had a bad game this past week, but I think everyone expects them to win the division, and they're set up for one of the better runs moving forward of any team in the NFL right now. If you look at Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch when they got to San Francisco, took them a couple years to get going. But then once they did, they've cooked over there. The same goes for the Bills. When Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane got to Buffalo, they got Josh Allen in there. It's a rough couple years, and then it breaks out. So I think it does take a little bit of time. You need to have some patience, because you're right. Every time you pull the rug out from this thing, the ripple effect is huge, because then it's, okay, you've still got this roster. You still got these contracts. Now you're asking all these guys to learn a new offense, which they may or may not be suited for, new defense, whatever it may be. You're totally changing the culture, everything. It's not good. Like, turnover is not good in really any organization. Like, how would you feel if at your work every 2 to 3 years, basically everyone got fired and they brought in all new staff? Like, that wouldn't work very well in any other workplace. And yet we expect it to work well in professional sports. And it's kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. And I get, at some point you got to show results. But it's not 3 games in. That's not what some point is. You got to be patient. Got to let it see. Gotta let it sink in a little bit. Let these guys get some reps of doing what they're trying to do. If you, I compare it to real work. it's not the same, but it is kind of at the same time. Like I think about how good I was at my job the very first time I, started at a new company. That first couple, months or that first year, you're not as good as you are in year 4, year 5, year 6 doing the same thing. You know everything. You've got all the tricks down. You're not learning something new every day. I think that's where we're at, and you're gonna have to just stick with this road for a little bit and see what's on the other side of it. Because there's not a ripcord you can just pull and suddenly fix this thing. You're just gonna have to try to push through the shit here.
I want to get to the defense here in just a second, but I want to ask you this, Stoney. Is it just don't turn the ball over? Is that just as simple as what this team could do to win games? It feels like if they just posted a game with 0 turnovers, regardless if the defense gets a turnover, if the offense just posts 0 turnovers, they would probably be 3-0. That's what it feels like right now.
That's progress too, right? We're at a point now where it's been so bad that we're on this show asking, hey, can you just not turn the ball over in a game? And maybe the outcome is completely different in it. I think that is a key issue here when you look at the flick 6 being absolutely the deciding play in week 1, and then the turnovers against the Jets and against the Packers. Like it's and to be fair, there have been some boneheaded mistakes by Will Levis, but I don't really put the sack fumble on him, where Nicholas Petit-Frere was practically still in his stance twerking as the guy comes through. But it's indicative of a larger theme with this team right now, in that everything's just got to kind of come together at the same time, because it's not right now. People are making multiple mistakes, allowing sacks. You're seeing Traylon Burks wide open down the field, dropping passes. These things have to you got to get to a point where things are consistent. And I think if you stop the panicky rush stuff from Will Levis, maybe that leads to it. If you can block things up a little bit better, maybe it leads to that. But for me, from where I sit, that is like the next step for this offense to getting right.
And by the way, when I say turnovers, I include special teams turnovers in that as well.
Yeah, that too. Which, hey, we made progress against the Packers. Fixed. Yeah, that's not a problem anymore. Colt Anderson can keep his job, right? But that's where, like, the next step for me is, like, just clean up these catastrophic mistakes that lead to turnovers, and then let's see what kind of baseline we have on offense.
Brady 10 asks, is there anything to say about both the current and past coaching staff when Malik looks like a good quarterback in just a month under different staff at a different place? He looked like a good backup quarterback here before he left this year. The prior 2 years, he did not, but we know that coaching staff probably didn't even like Malik. Who knows?
LaFleur had a great game plan for Malik, and I like you, to go back to that point, I'm pretty shocked that the Titans weren't more prepared for what we kind of all knew was going to be the plan for the Packers. And look, I came on this show last week and made fun of the Colts for what the hell did you think they were going to do in that game, and they turned around and they did it again. So full credit to Matt LaFleur there. He's obviously doing something that is working, or at least against these last 2 defensive coordinators. But yeah, it was a great game plan. I thought Malik played well. He made some really good throws. The slot fade to Christian Watson, great throw. There was another couple in there that I was like, that's a very nice throw. But we've seen
the defense matching up Roger McCreary on Christian Watson. That was a genius.
That's
coverage.
Good coordinating. That's good play calling. They knew they wanted that matchup. They knew they could get it in that situation, and they went and got it and took advantage of it. So Matt LaFleur called a hell of a game, and I'm not going to take anything away from Malik. He played really well too. But if you talk to anybody, literally anybody who has watched practice, games, been in the locker room, any of the media members that have watched every single play of Malik Willis over the last 2 years and Will Levis, not a single one of them will tell you that Malik Willis was better than Will Levis at any point over the last 2 years. So yes, he won the game. Yes, he played better in that specific game. No, I do not think he is the better quarterback. I think if you put Will Levis under Matt LaFleur in that game, Matt LaFleur probably gets that win too with Will Levis. I think it comes down to They have a competent offensive line that can block. They have good receiving talent. I think the Titans do too. But I think Matt LaFleur is a way better play caller, way more advanced offensive, coach right now than Brian Callahan. That's not to say Callahan can't get there. We just talked about patience, but LaFleur right now is one of the best ones doing it. That's why Brian Callahan is studying LaFleur in the off seasons, right?
I mean, he made a system that was designed perfectly for Malik, right? Quick throws, eliminate decisions.
Skill set.
They were one read throws. He was getting the ball out at 2.12 seconds flat, like one of the fastest times of week 3. And he knew that if his first read wasn't open, it's time to run and get the hell out of there. And it's the same thing they did with the Colts, but it's just like this defense, Denard Wilson chose the worst time to have his rookie game because it was embarrassing. To me, that was the most, I think, the more I think about it, that was the most maddening part of this game was the defense. I mean, I guess I'm just too desensitized by the offensive line at this point. But to me, I was so disappointed in this defense. And look, I'm going to say this, and hopefully, I don't know if Big Jeff watches this podcast now that we're on 104.5 The Zone. So I may be getting blocked soon, especially since my Twitter handle is up. But he ain't doing shit. And let me say something. I'm tired of him talking, a big game every week to just go do nothing. Let's be honest. Callahan even said it today when he was asked about it, like, everybody needs to play better. Okay. Big Jeff needs to play better. Big Jeff needs to start taking over games. Aaron Donald retired, and everybody's like, who's going to be the next Aaron Donald? And, here comes Jeff Simmons' name is up and all this stuff. And he hasn't done shit. And I get that maybe there's some double teams and stuff thrown in there. We've seen some triple teams. But at the end of the day, Aaron Donald wasn't getting single teamed every week. Chris Jones is not getting single teamed every week. There are guys that can beat double teams because they are game changers. And ever since he got injured, maybe since he got the contract, he has not been a game changer. And week 1, heading into week 1, he says, I'm going to knock the nail polish off Caleb Williams. I can't wait. He got 0 tackles against Caleb Williams, 0 quarterback hits against Caleb Williams, 0 sacks against Caleb Williams, and 0 quarterback hurries against Caleb Williams. Oh, wow. You really knocked that nail polish off there, bud. Then he goes that nobody runs on the Tennessee Titans after a week where they gave up 5.1 yards per carry up the middle. And then they proceeded to give 5.1 yards per attempt over the whole course of the game. And then 4.6 yards per attempt up the middle against the Green Bay Packers. And so far, he's got 1 sack, which was a really long developing sack, 2 tackles for loss, 1 in week 1, 1 in week 3, 1 quarterback hit, and 1 quarterback hurry. And then this dude has the nerve to say, well, I don't think Aaron Brewer can handle me and T'Vondre Sweat. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, we all know that he shouldn't, but now that you said it, he's going to fucking blank your ass because you guys, whatever you say, the opposite happens. And look, unpopular opinion, but if this is truly a lost year, when week 8, week 9, trade deadline comes around, not going to cry. I'll start with you, Stoney.
I want my credit for that. I want credit for that because I text the both of you in like June and said, "Hey, I'm just putting this out there, but what if? Look, I think Matt LaFleur, well, certainly to your point, Zach, I don't think the production has been there with Big Jeff that you would like to see from a player of his caliber. Matt LaFleur, it was one of the most impressive things I've seen in the NFL's young season so far is his game plan in this defense. And I don't know if we want to get into the debate of, well, how much did Malik Willis know about Denard Wilson's defense and all that. I think this is just good coaching.
Say very little.
I'm thinking this is good coaching and good film study because I don't think a lot of what the Titans did at first in the Packers game was very different from what they had done the first 2 weeks before. they did a fantastic job of putting their interior offensive linemen on Jeff and on Tavondre, blocking two guys with three, and then just trusting their tackles one-on-one with the Titans edge rushers, because they knew the Titans don't have a lot of dynamic ability at edge rusher. There's not threats coming from the outside. So hey, boys, don't even worry about it. Just get out there, get your man, block him up, and we'll be good. The ball's coming out quick anyway. We're going to just run away from the middle of this defense or get the ball out on the edges, make some plays, and then just when things are clicking, there's a play where they just let Jeff and Tavondre through. They just let them right through, and then they dump a screen off on the outside, and suddenly all the offensive linemen are at the second level blocking things up for a big run. It's just the timing, the tempo, the preparation was evident. LaFleur did a fantastic job. They capitalized on Denard Wilson sending the linebackers as extra rushers. You know, if you do that, it's going to open up the middle of the field. If you're playing a lot of man coverage down the field, suddenly there's this big hole in the middle of the field that Malik and the Green Bay wide receivers were ready for. So when those linebackers would come up, he'd dump it over to Jaden Reed for a big gain. Twofold effect is when you do that and you've got a mobile quarterback like Malik Willis, who, if he can just slip through a crack here, he's at the second level and there's nobody around him. So they were just very well prepared for what Denard Wilson was going to do. There was a play I jotted down where Arden Key rushes and he successfully gets to the quarterback. Malik sees it and he throws it right over Arden Key's head to the running back that just occupied the area that Key had just vacated. I mean, it looked like LaFleur just knew exactly what this defense was going to do and had prepared Malik Willis for it, to the point that Malik could go out there and execute, and it was really impressive. That said, Zach, to your point, this is not just a week 3 against the Packers thing that we're starting to talk about with Jeffrey Simmons. And the production hasn't been there for a few games in a row now, and now I'm gonna get fucking blocked too. Great, we're all three gonna be blocked by the end of the night. But it's an area where this defensive line, the interior pressure, has to work, or else the defense as a whole starts to struggle. And if it's not getting home, and if teams are starting to feel comfortable just putting bodies in the middle of the line and not letting them through and just taking their chances on the edge because they're not afraid of a Titans edge rush, that's a bad situation to be in. So I think he's got to step his game up a little bit. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that at this point.
100%. And it's one of those things, like, I do feel like he's been okay as a run defender. He leads the team in run stops. He's been okay in that regard. He's not taking over games or anything like that. But the pass rushing thing, he's got to be better. And it would be different if they did have good edge rushers, because then you could say, yeah, Jeff, you can just crush the pocket and make, kind of constrict things and let our edge guys win. But they don't. They have to get him penetrating and winning on the interior and creating sacks, creating pressures. He only has 2 pressures so far this year, which is the same amount as Sebastian Joseph Day. I get he's going to get more attention than old Seabass over there, but we need a little bit more production out of Jeff in the pass rush for sure, because you're not going to get it from Arden Key, and we know kind of like Harold Landry, he's going to be a finisher kind of guy. He is not necessarily a win in pressure kind of guy. Same with Sweat. So at some point, you've got to have guys that are win and pressure guys. And I think in their perfect world, I think they were hoping Simmons would be that. That Simmons would be your win, get pressure, and then Landry, Sweat, Key, all these guys are able to kind of clean it up. And obviously we've talked about they're going to have to blitz. They're going to have to bring inside linebackers, stuff like that. And we still need to see more out of that, I think, too. But Simmons has got to be a bigger factor for sure. He doesn't. You don't notice him most of the game, right? Like he shows up, he'll like knock a guy over.
You don't notice him or Tavondre Sweat right now, and that's not good.
Yeah, I think
you don't have edge rushers.
I think Sweat's been better than him so far.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Let's play a game.
Okay, Jigsaw.
Out of defensive tackles with at least 48 pass rush snaps, where do you think that Jeffrey Simmons lands in pass rush win percentage? And I'll start with you,
Out of
Mike.
how many?
I didn't tell you how many. You're just gonna have to guess. But
Oh,
I did 48 pass rush snaps is the minimum for 3 weeks.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll tell you this.
63rd.
Okay. What do you say?
Dang, I was going to say 42.
60. He is 60th out of all defensive linemen that played 48 pass rush snaps, 65 of which have done that in the NFL, with a 2.7 win rate.
Not good enough.
That's not good. And I don't think he knows that he's not playing well. I think he's of the understanding that he's playing like really exceptional football. So we'll see.
I'll be honest. There's part of his personality that I think cannot accept criticism. And I wonder if those coaches tiptoe around him and if they actually criticize him when they're in the film room, or if it's all just backpats and, hey, Big Jeff, you're doing great, buddy. Because I don't know.
You said it, not me, but I am nodding my head in agreement.
Well, I just think his personality. I could see him being a guy that just is not going to accept criticism well. So, which is problematic for the leader at this point of that defense. That's a problem.
Well, I have just
Cliff
checked
Yates
my
says,
phone.
you do not judge a quarterback in just 12 games. You guys do not know what you're talking about. And Zach, you are the worst. I thank you for listening, Cliff.
I just checked Twitter, and I haven't been blocked yet. So I just want to take this opportunity to remind everyone viewing, I have always said Jeffrey Simmons is the greatest football player on earth. I've never said a cross word about him. I think he's good enough. He should be in the MVP conversation right now.
Yeah, there you go. You have saved yourself from being blocked. But this defensive game plan, can we talk about? I feel like he thought that blitzing was going to be the best thing for this, but in reality, and that's because the Colts didn't really blitz a lot. But in reality, when you have the corners that you do and the linebackers that you do, I think confusing the coverages and making it difficult for Malik Willis to go to and find his first read is a lot better than trying to blitz him and leaving the first reads open. Because there was JT just shared a play while we're on air of like the middle of the field is wide open because Kenneth Murray and Ernest Jones go to the same spot.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, to me, it was more of like you should just put as many people out in the passing lanes as possible to make it hard for Malik Willis to make a quick decision. The longer that Malik Willis holds on to the ball, the better it is. But that's just the growing pains, right? Like at this point, I think that's you took your lumps, you learned from it. Now you got to move on because you can't do that against Snoop Huntley, who's a Pro Bowl quarterback, with these wide receivers. You just can't do that. Mike, as we head into the Miami game, but takeaways from this game lead me to thinking that this game is going to be more of what we saw last week if Denard Wilson tries to go with the same plan.
I don't know. I think it could be. It could be. I worry about the Titans getting eaten up with crossers in this game because Waddle and Hill are so fast. And there's nobody. We've talked about the lack of coverage ability in the middle of this field ad nauseum. The safeties are not fast. There are problems if they can start hitting some of these crossers for the Titans. And I don't know. I'd imagine Snoop Huntley is the guy that probably plays, and he's good enough to beat him without question. So I think it's possible, but yeah, this is something. Hey, Denard Wilson, show us that you can learn from, what you did in Green Bay, and apply it. Show us you can come up with a better plan against the Dolphins, who is a different scheme. I mean, it's some similar, I guess, like themes within the scheme compared to Matt LaFleur's offense. But a little bit different, and it's going to be a challenge because they struggled last week bad with Skylar Thompson. But I think they might have had the wrong quarterback in there.
I think it's fun to when you read the chat because earlier, I get trashed for bashing Will Levis, and now I'm getting trashed for defending Will Levis over Malik Willis, which makes no sense. I guess people just jump in at the wrong time, but I thoroughly trashed Will Levis at the beginning of this episode. And I've been on record to, of course, saying that they should have kept Malik Willis. But it's always fun to see what people take away and hear, and they just, it just is.
Nobody actually listens. They just want to get their takes off.
Yeah.
Boom.
I think that's really what it is. Stoney, as the Titans offense heads against Miami, what are you, I'm about to ask because it's pretty obvious what they need to fix and what they need to do. They need to find an entirely new right tackle. That's obviously off the table right now for this team heading into the Monday Night Football. Maybe that's a bye week solve or something like that. And obviously Will Levis has a lot that he has to work on. But that, again, is not really a coaching thing. But what can be a coaching thing is how they deploy the offense. And obviously we saw that when everything is clicking and everything is scripted, the offense looks fire. And then you see that when the play breaks down or Will Levis holds on to the ball too long or he drifts or doesn't see certain reads, there are still plays that are with guys getting wide open. Because that play, like that play to Josh Wiley that ends on the first drive at the 1 yard line, 3 guys were streaming open behind it by a wide margin. He had 4 guys he could choose from on that play. So to me, it's not a scheme issue. There is a sequencing issue. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to seeing on Monday is like, what has Brian Callahan learned now from the first 3 weeks? What his players can do, what they can't do, and what he can and can't do. What does he learn? And is it just as simple as maybe just running from under, or not running, but calling plays that require Will Levis to be under center instead of under shotgun? I feel like that's a big issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well because we're seeing the results of that so far, and it's not great. I think there are some personnel decisions they could make as well. Maybe a little less Traylon Burks, a little more NWI. I know he doesn't have the speed, but maybe shake some things up right there. Maybe leaning into a little more of what has been working for you. A lot of the Will Levis designed runs have been effective. Some of the like the boots, the rollouts, that sort of stuff, where they're asking Will Levis to get out of the pocket and just get away from the pressure altogether, has been effective, and he's actually been pretty well throwing on the move so far this season. So I think leaning into stuff like that, some of the run concepts, I know I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but they've been a little more successful in zone runs versus gap runs, that sort of thing. Like, look at the metrics and adapt and adjust and lean into the things that you're doing well to establish a baseline, build a foundation, and go from there. I do think it's worth saying, I think this is probably the worst defense that they'll have faced at this point in the season. I think they started with 3 pretty good defenses in 2024. So this is the point where I think Brian Callahan should be figuring out what does and doesn't work, and something he talked about last week, figuring out what this team is, who this team is. I think this is when you start to see those things come to fruition.
What about you, Mike? What are you looking for from the offense besides just like improvement from the players? But what are you looking from like a play calling standpoint?
I think they need to get back to running the football a little bit better. They struggled in this game against the Packers to run, which, I don't necessarily think that's all on play calling. I think some of it's just execution. And look, the Packers had some dudes up front, right? Like everyone talked about the 4 first-rounders and all that stuff. They've got some legitimate dudes. But I do want to see them get back to running the football well. I think the Dolphins are pretty good, or pretty bad up front generally against the run. Like Calais Campbell's still a nice player, but not what he used to be. Jalen Phillips more of a pass rush specialist than a big time run defender. And Chubb's out, so there's opportunities I think there up front. And yeah, you certainly want to see a clean game, no turnovers. I think that they talked ad nauseum on the broadcast about that -7 turnover differential, which doesn't include the punt blocks, but that is unsustainable if you want to win any football games. If you continue to average a more than -2 turnover differential per game, you're gonna win. You're gonna win maybe one game, maybe two games tops all season. So that's got to correct itself, and I think it will. I think some of it's been fluky. There's been at least 2 of the interceptions have been like late game, just kind of heaving it up, trying to make something happen kind of plays. There's been a couple strip sacks, which we know, kind of the offensive line issues and things like that contribute there. But that it's got to get cleaned up. So they need to protect the ball, run it a little bit better, and just keep out of these terrible situations that they keep putting themselves in.
I was kind of surprised that they got away from the run. Robert Rogers says it's hard to run the ball when you only call 8 running plays. CWCW talks about, Vrabel running the ball ad nauseum, all the way through the game. It didn't matter if he was down 20 or up 30, he was running that ball. And I feel like that's where Brian Callahan, I think that's where the green came last week. Like, that's where you saw the rookie play caller, one of the more glaring things, because he even says you get down, that pick six changed everything. And that, it turns out it's not Levis's fault, really. Blaine was really big on that. You just, there's no solution for it. It's just one of those things that a quarterback has to know, that you just don't throw to Jair Alexander's side. And Will Levis even said that it kind of like scared him, and he showed a little bit of hesitation on hitches later on in the game. So, at that point, though, it also, I believe that Brian Callahan also became hesitant, and he saw, we're down 17-7, can't run the ball. And they weren't running the ball very effectively anyway. Let's throw that out there. But I feel like it maybe some runs to the edges would have helped him and all that kind of stuff. It just felt like that was a big issue to me. Was when I'm looking at the stat sheet that gets printed off like every quarter at the studio, I'm like, man, they're not running the ball. Why aren't they running the ball? What happened there? But yeah, I mean, the pick six, I think that's just when you have a young offense and a young head coach and young play caller. That's kind of like one of those moments where you point and say, yeah, I mean, they could have done better, but I kind of understand what they were trying to do. And they were trying to chase the points, chase the dragons, instead of trying to get the run game to get their offensive linemen in a rhythm and all that kind of stuff. Because run blocking gets your linemen in a rhythm. And it also wears on the defensive players. And the way that they were approaching the line, the way that a handful of their play calls were going all the way down to 0, all that stuff was making it really easy on the defense to read what the offense was going to do. So you have to be able, and I'll ask, that's what you have to be able to do against the Dolphins. You have to be able to play time of possession, ball control football, and Will Levis does not need to throw it 34 times. If he does, he does. But you got to make sure that he plays safe, sound football. And even if he has to do the Peyton Manning thing where he just grabs the ball like this and just falls to the ground in the fetal position, do it. Anything to protect the football. Like, that is where it's at. Even if your offensive line sucks, find a way to protect the football. Peyton Manning was really good about that. He would just give up on the play or, whatever. He didn't care. I'm giving up on the play. I'll just fall to the ground because I don't want to fumble and I don't want to get hit. And he just gave himself up. So I agree with both of you guys, though. Treylon Burks, holy crap. We're done. I'm done with Treylon Burks.
100%.
Like, 100% out, play NWI. But I just out on it. Like, I'm out on Traylon Burks.
I would love to see more NWI than Traylon Burks in this game. I do actually think he has done well blocking, but he is such a liability when it comes to making plays. And he just has no instinct for it. Like, again, another guy that we're sitting here talking about has no instinct for the game, no feel for the game. And you watch like DeAndre Hopkins play, and I will criticize Hopkins a little bit related to that pick six. I thought he kind of screwed Will a little bit on that play because he hits the top of his hitch and then he takes this weird step back towards the sidelines, which really gives Jair a runway to just run in front of it. And Kurt Warner pointed out, that he was taking the inside leverage anyways, and that was a smart play just because of the split that Hopkins had on that play and everything like that. So that Alexander played that well. Obviously, kind of guessed at it and made a play.
I don't think he guessed because you pointed out the week 1 play that's almost identical that he hit on Tyreek Stevenson. Blaine, and I tend to agree with Blaine after I saw that play, is like, that's just an all-pro cornerback doing all-pro cornerback things because they studied the game, they studied the film, and Will Levis made it, predictable and easy by throwing to his side. He should have gone. At that point, you got to attack like Eric Stokes. That's the guy you attack in a game plan situation as the quarterback. You just don't throw to that side of the field.
Yeah, I think so, but I do think Hopkins could have done a better job of coming back to the ball and at least breaking that up, making it an incomplete pass instead of allowing it to be a pick six. That said, Hopkins was great in this game and looked like his old self, which is really encouraging. But Hopkins and Burks are kind of like really fun, just a complete split, right? Because Burks has this whole physical tool set. Hopkins has a decent physical tool set, but he's 32 years old now. He's not fast by any means, but his feel for the game is just so good. Like it's one of those things you don't even have to. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. And he just has it, and Burks has none of it, and they could not.
At least NWI has some of it. I mean, I feel like NWI at this point, we make fun of NWI all the time, right?
He's
like,
not
we
a bad
make fun
player.
of him
He
constantly.
really isn't. He's better,
but he is way better than Traylon Burks at this point.
Yeah, he flat out is better than Burks.
And hey, the benefit of adding NWI into the offense a little bit more, he might be able to help out with your right tackle situation a little bit because he's a pretty damn good blocker. They got him out there running power, lining him up outside, motioning him in, only for him to return out to the perimeter and clear out the end man over there. Like, we're talking about Band-Aids. We're talking about patching this ship up. Put NWI in there.
Well, the patch should really be that DeAndre Hopkins just plays a bunch of snaps. Like,
well, that too.
It's
yeah,
time
that
to
would help
unleash
too.
the beast at this point.
Yeah,
Cliff is obsessed with me in the YouTube comment. He's for
bro,
a guy that he hates, he is all about talking about me. I love it.
Bro, his Zach's name is on the screen, and you still can't spell it right. Come on, Cliff.
I wouldn't expect him to be able to spell.
Come on.
So anyway, this game, obviously, you can't. 0-4. There's been one team to make the playoffs going 0-4, and that was like the 1992 Chargers who went 11-5. So is there such a thing? So I'm going to ask you this: is there such a thing as a must-win for a team that's probably not making the playoffs? Because, like, to me, this is more of a must-win for Will Levis than it is like you're worried about your head coach being fired, you're worried about your GM being fired, and all this kind of stuff. It's more like, if they go 0-4 and Will Levis does the same thing he's done the previous 3 weeks, do they consider benching him at the bye because the bye came a little early? I wouldn't. I don't think they do, but I think you do have to pose the question.
No.
Yeah,
no?
I agree. Because I think this season they've preached patience from the beginning. I think they're going to get a long look at Will Levis. I don't think we see Mason Rudolph unless Will Levis is injured or unless they've just already made up their mind that Will Levis isn't the guy. But I think you just, at this point, if it's about evaluating what he is for the future, I think you just ride it out with him.
Yeah, you're not benching him. It would be crazy to bench him. I do think from a team morale standpoint, for the rest of the season, this might be a must win, because if you go 0-4 into the bye, I mean, there's going to be some guys. That's going to be a long 2 weeks sitting there stewing over 0-4, and there may be some guys starting to check out. And I think to get some buy-in with the Callahan thing and with what they're doing and with Levis and all, it would do them a lot of good to win this game without question. Because again, if you lose to another backup quarterback and in back-to-back weeks, you're going to rightfully take a lot of heat, both nationally, locally, and I think internally. At that point, you start to have some people asking some questions of, what are we doing here? Like, we thought we were going to be a competitive team, and here we are. The season's done, which I've already pronounced it dead. But maybe they have more faith in the building than me. I hope they do. But
it could happen. But I mean, I'm just, it all really, everybody could say, well, it hinges on the offensive line. Well, it hinges on the defense playing perfect games, all this stuff. It really just all hinges on the quarterback. And they got to get good quarterback play. And you guys are right. I fully agree with you. They shouldn't bench him. I wouldn't rule out a Miss Amy Adams Strunk phone call or something. But, I wouldn't rule that out. I don't know. But there's always the Amy Adams Strunk wild card that can be played.
Listen, Miss Amy, I'm talking to you now. There is no worse result for this season than you benching Will Levis after 4 games. Mason Rudolph comes in and gets you to 6-11, knocks you out of the top 5 picks, and you don't know anything more about any of the pieces you have on this team besides that Mason Rudolph is a decent backup quarterback. Like, if that's all you get out of this season, you have failed in every way possible. Write it out with Levis. If it's so bad that you're 2-15, great. You got the first overall pick. Like, if it gets better, then great. Maybe you have some hope that he's a guy.
It's really a win-win situation for the franchise. Either you find out that Will Levis is the dude because he carried you on an improbable run where you almost made the playoffs because he was near perfect, so you can ride with him another year in a down quarterback class. Or you find out that he's not the guy and you can do a soft reset at the quarterback position, whether you want to try and bring in a bridge quarterback or you want to, ride with Levis again, knowing what he is, but you could still get the quarterbacks in 2026. Like, you kind of know what he is. And that's just kind of where you have to ride. You have to ride Will Levis the rest of the way. That is, and for all the people that say that you can't figure out what Will Levis is, because the offensive line is bad and everything. Over 59% of his dropbacks have been kept clean so far. That number will probably look better as other players start playing up to their ability. I do think that Bill Callahan will get Peter Skoronski and Lloyd Cushenberry going. I do think that Brian Callahan will be able to call quick plays that put Will Levis in position to succeed and take advantage of the running backs, of the wide receivers, right? So that number will go up. That is a lot of kept clean dropbacks that you can use to evaluate the quarterback. And sometimes the best way to evaluate the quarterback is to see how he handles pressure. And that is this team will be able to know what Will Levis is by the end of the year. Whether that includes a benching or not, I don't know. Again, I'm not pulling for Will Levis to be benched. I want Will Levis to play the whole freaking year. And I want him to be good. It's just nothing that I've seen from him so far this year. I'm clinging to memories and hope of they can unlock Atlanta Falcons or Miami Dolphins Will Levis. We got something cooking. Even Pittsburgh Steelers Will Levis can get you something cooking. So that's just kind of where I'm at with Will Levis. I just got to see it to believe it. And to my number one fan, Cliff, what I told Blaine was, yes, I thought he did really good from the broadcast view. I want to watch the all 22 because the broadcast view and the data don't jive, and the all 22 will give me better information. And at the time, the all 22 was not working. So that's where I'm at. The all 22 tells me I didn't really see a special enough player to think that he is the guy long term, but I did see improvements from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. I just need to quit seeing 1% improvements. I need to see a big jump in improvements every week. And that goes for a lot of players on this team. And that's at the end of the day, Everybody needs to take a percentage jump across the board, including J.C. Latham, who has not been bad, needs to continue improving. He cannot afford to take a step back. If he takes a step back and Peter Skoronski takes a step forward, well, then you're just fucked. I mean, you still got the same issues that you always do. Everybody across the board has to continue to improve or start to improve in the case of NPF.
Coaches too.
Titans versus Dolphins.
What was the question?
Final words on Titans versus Dolphins.
Oh God. I'm going to try my best to fight the temptation to turn over to the other Monday Night Football game when it starts, because this one's probably going to be a relatively nasty looking game. But I don't know.
I'll be on the radio till midnight, by the way, so that's going to be.
No, that sounds like
fantastic. They better freaking win. That's all I gotta say.
It would be nice. I mean, you need to see progression. I mean, it's what it comes down to. And look, I guess I'm past the point of caring that much whether they win or lose. I'd like to see them win, just to prove again, like a little bit of proof of concept is what you're looking for at this point. And that would help if you could get a win in Miami on a primetime stage, and at least that quiets it down over the bye week, and maybe some of the crazy over the top takes about Levis and Callahan and everyone else involved in this thing starts. At least it takes a little 2-week break.
Well, it'll be replaced with, I told you that Will Levis is the next coming of John Elway. That's what it'll get replaced with.
Yeah, well, true.
It just gets replaced with a new level of crazy. Instead of negative crazy, it's positive crazy. Stoney, what's your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think this team desperately needs a spark. They need not only a good performance, they need a complete performance and one that inspires a little confidence moving forward. I don't know what my real expectations are as to whether or not this team can get back into a playoff race if they start stringing together a few wins here and there. But I think if there's any hope left for the 2024 season to salvage it, this is a game in this spot, in this matchup, that they absolutely have to win to go into the bye week with a little confidence and not soul searching for 2 weeks before the Indianapolis Colts. Because if you win this game, you have a little confidence. The Colts are beatable too. Suddenly you're 2-3, and maybe we're revisiting this conversation about the outlook of this team for 2024. That can only happen if they go to Miami on Monday Night Football and serve it up to the Dolphins, man. So I think this is a critical game. We're at a critical juncture in the season right now.
Well, the Colts are the only team within the one of the few teams with a worse quarterback situation than you, because he's just downright terrible right now. So if you get a conference win against the Dolphins, go into the bye, get some rest, heal some wounds, maybe go see a sports psychologist, Will Levis, get some brain spotting done, whatever. And then you go and you beat the Colts. Well, that's 2 big wins in the AFC. One of those a division win. And there is a good chance that they could go. I know this is going to sound crazy after all the negativity that we probably have talked about today, but they could go 5-1 in the division. Does not mean it means that they may go 6-10 or 6-11. But I think they could split with the Texans. I don't think the Texans are as good as what everybody said they were. But they are still the best in the division. And I think that they could split with the Texans while the Texans sweep everybody else as well. But it won't matter because the Texans will win other meaningful games and the Titans probably won't. But I don't think the Jags are good. And I don't think the Colts are good, and I think the Titans are clearly better than both those teams.
I do not think they're clearly better. I think they're the same. They are the same crap as.
They are clearly better. I mean, the defense is better than both of them. The quarterback is about the same with Trevor Lawrence, and they got better pass catchers. I think they'll catch their stride and look a lot better than what they do right now. But the Colts are just a terrible football team, overrated, completely trash. And the Jaguars are probably actually the equals, but I still like the Titans better than Jags. Fuck the Jaguars.
They're all bad. They're all bad football teams. The AFC South,
except for the Texans,
is who we thought they were. They are the same division.
They came full circle, didn't it? We were talking about this division with all these great young quarterbacks, and then 3 of the quarterbacks freaking stink right now.
Man,
if the Titans are better than those two teams, it's only because they're the 30th best team in the league, and the other two are 31 and 32.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're like the 15th best team in the league. I just they're better than those two teams. Come on.
I don't know.
I think they're better. That will do it for us. Football and Other F Words, 104.5 The Zone. Really appreciate everybody hanging out with us and talking to us. And just remember that the Jaguars have scored less points than the Tennessee Titans. That's very important for everybody to remember right now. The Jaguars are terrible. Their quarterback is terrible, and they pay him $275 million. So just, that is one good thing, one positive thing. At least you're not paying Will Levis $275 million for the same results that the Jaguars are getting from Trevor Lawrence right now. So, hey, there you go. Stoney for Sobros Network and Stacking the Inbox. And you got PK.com for Mike Herndon. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.